Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Mindy here. I hope you had a phenomenal weekend and you're off to the start of a great week. Today I'm going to do a video on all things Ariana Grande fragrance. So last night I ran into this fragrance. This is the Thank You Next Body Mist in Walgreens. And I also came across this brand new fragrance, Thank You Next 2.0. At least it's new to me. So I was excited to bring these into my collection, play with them a little bit, and then share my thoughts on all of the other Ariana Grande fragrances that I have. Now, these are the body mists, and I love picking these up. I think it's great that this house or her brand offers these body mists because it's kind of an affordable, low-risk way to try out her fragrances, and they're quite accessible. So at Walgreens, Walmart, on Amazon as well, you can pick these up generally in the price range of $8 to $12. So you get quite a bit for that price point, and I love playing around with these. All of the fragrances that I'm going to talk about today are classified as a fruity floral gourmand or a fruity floral fragrance. Now that is with the exception of R.E.M, one of the newer Ariana Grande releases, and that is classified as an amber vanilla fragrance. Now all of these are easy reach, easygoing, light-hearted fragrances for me. I'm not going to wear most of these in a business setting, but I do truly like to reach for them on the weekends or when I'm going out. If I want something carefree and easygoing, she has a lot of fragrances in her collection or her offering that really fit the bill for that need. I have fragrances that I like to reach for a business setting. I have fragrances I like to reach for a date night out. Fragrances for that comforting feeling when you want that kind of heavy gourmand and something to, soothe your thoughts and your mindset. But then these I consider mostly to be fun, easygoing, lighthearted fragrances. If that interests you, please stay tuned and we will talk about all things Ariana Grande. Okay, so just a quick spoiler alert, I do have these fragrances listed in order of my least favorite to my favorite. So I will be starting with Thank You Next. So this is a fragrance that is nice. I find it to be pretty, but I also find it to be sweet and a little bit generic. This is something you might smell when you walk into a store. It's probably going to be somewhat familiar to people. It feels like I've smelled this before. Now in this fragrance is raspberry and pear, and there's coconut and pink rose. When I smell this, I get kind of a creamy vibe, and I think that creaminess might be coming from the coconut in this fragrance. That part of it I do like. What I'm not crazy about in this one, I believe, is the pear. I'm getting some freshness when I smell this fragrance, and I'm not crazy about the fresh component of this one. I would have preferred personally for it to lean into more of a gourmand category, and of course a pear note is going to be gourmand, but it just adds a little bit of freshness to this that I'm not totally crazy about. Now overall, I do enjoy this one. Of course, this is one that I have the body mist for. I like the fragrance, but I don't think I'd reach for it as much over some of the others that I have in my collection. And so for that reason, it is lower on the list. Again, that is Thank You Next by Ariana Grande. So next on my list is Moonlight, and this one is lower on the list as well. It's also sweet. It's also a pretty fragrance. I do like it, but it's not one of my favorites when I go through this list. This one, I immediately get a burst of fruitiness with this fragrance. It has plum and black currant in it, and so it's kind of more of a darker, deeper fruity vibe than some of the other fragrances I'm mentioning here. I do get a little bit of marshmallow when I smell it as well. There are other fragrances that I pull out more of a marshmallow vibe in than this one, but it definitely is there lingering in the background. This is one that I think would be an easy wear, an easy reach for somebody. It is lighthearted like all of the other fragrances or most of the other fragrances here, and one that I find to be nice. I just don't like it as much as some of the others. That dark, deep, fruity aspect mixed with the florals isn't necessarily my favorite amongst all of these fragrances, but it is a nice one. I think a lot of people would truly enjoy this, especially if you like that fruity aspect. That is Moonlight. The next fragrance that I have here is Thank You Next 2.0, and this is the one that I just saw released. I have a feeling this was probably released very recently, and it's a brand new fragrance to me. I do get that underlying base from Thank You Next, but I do have a preference for this fragrance. One thing to note is there is an initial burst of fruitiness from this one. If you are not a fan of fruity fragrances, this will not be for you. In this fragrance is wild strawberry, pomegranate, and apple juice, and I undoubtedly pick up that strawberry vibe from this one. And I do like it. I also get the apple. There might be a little bit of sourness from the apple juice that's in this one, and I do like that. Now, like I said, I do get a lot of that base that is in Thank You Next, but this takes a very fruity direction. I did see that woody is one of the primary accords listed for this fragrance. I don't pick a lot of woodiness up here. It is very strong on the fruitiness, like I mentioned. That is the key note, the key component that I'm picking up here. So in the fragrance community, from time to time we hear about juvenile fragrances, we hear about mature fragrances, and in this case, I do think a lot of people would perceive Thank You Next 2.0 as a juvenile fragrance. Now, I personally don't necessarily subscribe to that notion that you should wear this or you should wear that. I think you should wear what makes you happy and what you enjoy. But I do agree that some people are probably going to perceive this one as juvenile, and maybe some of the others that I have here as well. But I will be reaching for this. I do enjoy it. This is the type of fragrance that I would wear if I had something fun going on, if I wanted to throw something on for the weekend and I was out running around. I do enjoy these fragrances, and I don't mind the fact that they're sweet or that they're a little bit fruity or that they have a little bit of a coconutty, sugary vibe to them. A lot of these are fun, easy wears for me. So like I said, that may not appeal to everyone, but I like it, and I have a good mix of fragrances in my collection to really meet the needs of those different reasons that I would reach for them. And in this case, I do classify most of these as fun and lighthearted. I'm not going to be taking myself too seriously when I wear these. Just a quick mention, because I think some people may be put off with these fragrances for that reason. So next up is Sweet Like Candy, and this is one that I really enjoy. Again, this is a sweet fragrance, but it's not as fruity as some of the others. There are fruity components in this one. There's blackberry, there's pear, there's bergamot that gives it a little bit of that citrusy note. But what really stands out for me in this fragrance is the vanilla, the whipped cream, the marshmallow. You can smell the marshmallow in this one as well, but I do think there's another fragrance where that marshmallow note is more prominent. I'll talk about that one in a little while. This one also has a really nice mix of florals, and the florals play really nicely here. The florals are frangipani, honeysuckle, and jasmine. Another one that just goes very sweet, but it doesn't go too far into that fruity realm that some people may perceive to be a little bit juvenile. This one could also be perceived to be a little bit generic because I feel like I've smelled this before, but I do like it, and it's one that I would reach for. It sort of reminds me of going into a trendy clothing store and that smell that you might pick up there while you're shopping. But nevertheless, I do think it's a good one. One that I don't feel the need to buy the actual bottle for because I have this body mist for now, but a nice one. That is Sweet Like Candy. So the next fragrance that I have here is Ari, of course, by Ariana Grande. And this is one of the favorites that I've spoken about so far. This is a little bit more well-rounded than all of the other fragrances that I've talked about so far, because while there is that sweet aspect to it and there is a fruity aspect to it, I really like the woody dry down in this fragrance. There are marshmallows in here, so you definitely get some sweetness, but of all the fragrances she has here that have that marshmallow note in them, it's the most prominent here. I don't think it goes too sweet or too overly marshmallow because there are the woody notes in the base, and that woody note aspect really rounds out this fragrance. One thing I'll say is the initial burst of this fragrance does have a lot of fruitiness. There's the raspberry, the pear, and the grapefruit. But that tones down quite a bit, and it dries down to mostly a woody, marshmallowy type fragrance. I don't know, is that a word? There are some fruity aspects to this one, but they dissipate a little bit in comparison to some of the other notes. one that I really enjoy. This was definitely full bottle worthy for me. If I recall, I picked this up at a very affordable price, and so I do like to reach for this one. I wore it not too long ago to an outdoor event, and as the wind blew, I picked up some sillage from this one and really found it to be a gorgeous fragrance. One to definitely try out if that fruity but more woody, marshmallow type fragrance appeals to you. Again, that is Ari by Ariana Grande. Okay, next on my list is Cloud by Ariana Grande, and if you are a fragrance enthusiast, you already know about this fragrance. It is very pretty. It's sweet, it has coconut, it has praline, it has whipped cream, and this one is different than a lot of the other gourmands that I have in my collection because it has an aspect of freshness to it. And that freshness can be really refreshing with this fragrance. I enjoy wearing this on a really hot summer day. But the one thing I'll say is sometimes that freshness comes out a little bit too much for me, almost like I'm picking up a toothpaste vibe. It becomes so overly fresh that it's hard for me to wear. That only happens some of the time. It's not overly noticeable, and for the most part, I find this to be a very easy wear. The reason I'm not reaching for this one as much is for a couple reasons. First of all, this is forever going to be compared, it seems, to Baccarat Rouge 540. And while I do not think they smell alike that much, there are some similarities. And between the two, I don't have Baccarat Rouge 540, I have Amber Oud Roug, but this is very, very similar to Baccarat Rouge 540. If I had to choose between these two fragrances, I do have a preference for reaching for this one. I think it's just a little bit more mature, maybe a little bit more sophisticated, and I just overall prefer the scent profile here. And the other reason I'm not reaching for this one enough is because of that toothpaste aspect that I mentioned, where it does lean a little bit overly fresh to me at times. It is one fragrance that I do like, I do enjoy it, and I find it to be an easy reach. That is Cloud by Ariana Grande. The last one that I have here is one of the newer releases from Ariana Grande, and that is R.E.M. This is a different fragrance. This stands out and stands apart from every other fragrance that I've spoken about today. So it really stands apart in R.E.M. from some of these others that are very sweet. They're more fruity floral gourmands, whereas this one is an amber vanilla. Is the notes in this fragrance. There is zephyr here, which is apparently kind of a sweet gourmand type note. There is quince, which is an aromatic fruit. It's sour, it's dry. What I really pick up here is some caramel mixed with the lavender, and I think it's done very, very nicely in this fragrance. And one thing about this one is that it has kind of a salty accord in it, which is sort of reminiscent of Olympia. It does not smell like Olympia by Paco Rabanne, but that salty aspect to it does kind of remind me of Olympia. Very different notes, profiles, but just something to call out if you're familiar with that fragrance. You may recognize it here. And this one seems to be a little bit more mature. I don't mean that in a bad way, but when you compare it against some of the other fragrances that are more sweet, more fruity, maybe a little bit more typical of a celebrity fragrance, this is different. This is unique, and it does smell niche, as other people have suggested before. It doesn't smell like everything else that is out there on the market, and for that reason, I do truly appreciate it. This does have lavender in it, and it blends so beautifully in this composition with the other notes to make it such a beautiful gourmand-like fragrance, but one that has lavender for that soothing note. I enjoy wearing this. This is one that I do recommend people getting their nose on if you happen to be in an Ulta. I don't know that everyone is going to love this fragrance, but it's one that I truly enjoy and one I think people should test out to see if this appeals to you. Again, that is R.E.M. by Ariana Grande. Alright guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video on Ariana Grande fragrances. If you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. As always, I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your week, and until next time, I'll see you soon.